All right, Tony Cupcakes, we are back, mate. How you going?
I'm doing really well, Zach. Yourself?
Mate, you taught me something a while ago, and it was don't bury the lead. So I feel like we've just got to rip the band-aid off and get straight into it because for people listening, Cocksy and I have not spoken since Sunday. We all know what we're referring to that happened on Sunday. It is Tuesday afternoon, 48 hours or so later. Tone, hit me with your thoughts, mate. Let's just get straight into it.
It was a hard one to watch, wasn't it? Of course, we're talking about Tim Tszyu's third round knockout loss to Bahkram. You can pronounce his surname for me, Zach.
Murtazaliev.
Murtazaliev. Yeah, just absolutely got blown away. Smashed to the canvas three times in the second round, and was lucky to make it into the third, and sort of given every opportunity to work his way back into the fight, but he was clearly all over the shop and quite severely concussed, and got bludgeoned to the canvas again before the towel came in. So, quite a large shock result, and certainly one that Aussie fight fans were probably very disappointed to see.
Yeah, that's saying it. That's putting it lightly. But what did you think going in, Coxie? Obviously, as you mentioned there, we were all shocked. Um, maybe we were all guilty of being a little arrogant and cocky about what we thought was going to happen, which we'll expand on that later. But what did you think going in?
I'll be honest, I hadn't seen much more than sort of highlight packages of Buckram, so I probably wasn't as well across his career as I should have been going in. That said, conventional wisdom was that Tim had proved too strong, too tough, and outmuscle him on the inside. The short odds were for him to win by knockout. In the back of my mind, I was thinking it might be a points fight for Tim. Backroom's obviously a tough guy, never been stopped, and probably never fought at Tim's level before, but certainly had the scores on the doors in other fights there. So nothing in his record to suggest that he'd be finishing the fight on the canvas inside the distance, but probably not a lot to suggest on paper that he would have the measure of so easily. But look, leading up to the fight, he was saying Tim's built for me. He's going to be right in front of me the whole time, and that's what I want. We're going to have a fight in center ring, and at the end of the day, it was a style that suited Tszyu, and Bahkram just got the better of it. He was the one who was the slicker puncher, much more loose, particularly in that first round. He just looked so relaxed in there, certainly not out of his depth at any stage. His jab was tremendous. He was able to tag Tszyu with that repeatedly when the Aussie was trying to come in, and he set up those beautiful power shots, and that check left hook of his is just a thing of beauty. It's well disguised. He doesn't overuse it, but he knows when to use it, and that was the great weapon that he unleashed on Tim's chin in that fight that did most of the damage.
Yeah, now we could go on a complete side tangent and talk about what definition of check hook you mean, because as we know, there are about 4 million of them in the boxing universe. But I'll let that one slide for another day. But yeah, mate, I was very similar. I hadn't seen much of Bahkram at all. I'd never seen a full fight. I'd seen bits and pieces here and there. I felt like I'd seen enough to kind of have a pretty good idea of what he was all about. And I had Tim by a sort of late-ish stoppage, sort of mid to late. I was thinking by 7, 8, 9, those shots that he would be able to land from the jump that I thought would really start taking their toll. It looked to me like Bahkram is kind of one of those guys that fights really tall, and he moves his arms and his shoulders, but his head just stays in the middle. No matter what way he punches, his head just stays there. And those type of guys, you know, generally speaking, are easy to counter because you don't even really have to be looking at them. You can be looking at the floor and throw an overhand right, and you probably have 75% chance of landing it. I thought that was the way it was going to go. I expected to continue to see Tim be much more patient, very similar to the Tony Harrison fight and the Brian Mendoza fight. I thought that's the version of Tim we were going to get. I absolutely did not expect we were going to get the version that turned up and fought Terrell Gorchet in his American debut. So the thing for me that I can't believe it. Like 2 days later, I literally just cannot believe it. It happened. I saw it. It's real. It's reality. I have to believe it because it happened, but I cannot believe that Tim did not learn his lesson from the Gaucher fight. You know, he went out in that fight trying to be a stubborn, brawling destroyer, paying absolutely no respect to his opponent, and almost paid the ultimate price, paid a pretty hefty one in the first round. And he did not learn his lesson because he did the exact same thing again this time. I can't believe it. We've praised, or especially me, I've praised Team Tszyu. I've praised Igor Golyabev. They've never put a foot wrong. They're the best team in the country. They're the most professional. Go back and listen to the old pods. I've definitely, those words have come out of my mouth. I don't know what is going on, if it was just Tim or it was the team or it was a combination, or I just can't believe Tim did not learn his lesson. I can't believe it.
Pride comes before a fall, as they say, and that might have been Tszyu's Achilles heel in this one. I don't think you're ever going to get Tim Tszyu change his style per se, but he can certainly change the application of that style. As you rightly mentioned, like against Tony Harrison and Mendoza, he was a lot more surgical in picking his shots, and I think that's when he's at his best. He's got great accuracy and great timing. It's when he rushes his work and tries to create an impact too quickly that he seems to get a little bit messy with his shots. And as we saw, you can't do that at the top level. You just can't.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think now we've seen quite a few different versions of Tim all the way through. Like us here in Australia, we're lucky to have seen, what's he had, 26 fights. We've probably seen 24 or 25 of them. I think his first one there was no footage of. I reckon we've all probably seen every other one after that, or pretty damn close to. Certainly the last 15 or so we've all seen being on TV. So I feel like we have a pretty good measure of his development. And there was a time, and I remember saying these words on this pod, like his level of development and improvement was Canelo-esque. Like there were times through a 5-fight stretch where he was just improving in so many different categories. It was unbelievable. I thought the best version of him was the Jeff Horn fight because he was using his feet. He's just, after that fight, he just stopped using his feet. He just started being like a walk forward, stand in front destroyer. I don't understand what the advantage of being so stationary is.
No, and
I don't understand it. I don't get it at all. I can't believe it happened, Cocksy. I can't believe it.
And look, he's not exactly a defensive genius at the best of times. He is there to be hit. So you need a bit of footwork and a little bit of movement, not just pulling straight back with your chin in the air and hoping the punches fall short and trying to walk through the power coming back the other way. See, I think Tszyu can punch, but I don't think he's a pure puncher by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a crisp, accurate, precision puncher who knows when to throw the hard shots and how to make them land and how to make them count. I think when you start thinking that you're the bigger puncher in the ring, you can fall into that trap of thinking, well, I can just walk this guy down. If he hits me, I'll hit him back and I'll have the power to do the damage, and whatever I take will get evened out in the wash. But you know, we saw on the weekend that's clearly not the case. And once Tim was hurt, he never fully recovered. He didn't know how to get himself out of trouble either, whether by clinching or boxing long or whatever. And being dropped 3 times in that round, he didn't come out in good shape for the third round at all. Even with the extra minute there that he was given by the doctor, and well within the rules, that pretty much an extra minute's rest there at the end of the 1 minute break there when the doctor examined him. Even then, that should have freshened
in the ring though.
I probably have, but I probably just haven't taken much notice.
That seemed like a bit of an A-side move to me, but anyway, whatever.
Quite possibly.
Didn't affect the result.
But yeah, he was still maybe not on Queer Street, but just around the corner from it.
Yeah. I mean, mate, I genuinely just can't believe it. But you picked up on a good thing there about Tim not being that devastating power puncher. And he isn't. And he never has been. And his power has certainly improved, very similar to how Canelo improved his power. But Canelo's strength was always timing and accuracy as well. So they as different as they are, and I'm not saying Tim is on Canelo's level, but they are kind of similar in that respect. Whereas, you know, and we have to go back to another old saying, our old friend Paulie Malignaggi. You know, you have to know what you are, but you have to know what you aren't.
I was
Tim
wondering who
doesn't
was
know.
going to roll that one out first.
It seems to me, just looking from the outside in, Tim doesn't know that he's not a puncher.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a puncher like his dad. He thinks he's the Deontay Wilder of junior middleweight. I mean, evidence would tell us that he isn't. I don't want to tell a full-time professional world-class fighter what they are and what they're not. But, I mean, we've seen the fights. I would comfortably put him in the not category in that regard. He's fantastic in other areas, and he's a really good altogether fighter. And I think he could be the best in the weight class, employing a different style that utilizes his actual strengths, not what he wants to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't say a different style, but a different strategy with his style. Because again, I don't think you're going to change his style per se. It's going to be more about the application of the tools that he's got in his arsenal there. I certainly think, he's become, I wouldn't say he's abandoned his jab, but it's sort of become a secondary tool for him, not something that he uses as consistently as he has in the past in some of his better performances. But I do think that, like, he didn't turn up and fight any different to what we kind of expect Tim Tszyu to fight like. He was marching forward, he was trying to chin the bloke, and we've grown accustomed to that's the way he fights. But as you said, you look back to some of his better performances, and they were just using the same tools, but in a more polished way. And I think the kid's pretty stubborn, and you need that to be a professional boxer. So I don't know if maybe they've been trying to convince him in the gym to be a bit more surgical in his attacks, and he's just kind of ignored that advice, or if this is what they wanted him to do, go out there and try and bomb the bloke out. But certainly a lot of things to go back and review as a team and plot their way forward from there, which I guess brings me to a question of my own. Where does he go from here? What do you do with him to rebuild his career, Zach?
Mate, I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really worry me. I don't mind guys losing and taking a step back down and building their way back up and ultimately either getting to where they want to get to or not. Like, that's just part of the sport. That's life, you know? Not everything goes your way all the time. So I'm sure whatever his management and his promoters come up with in terms of the path forward will be perfectly fine. And if Tim has the desire and the will to continue, he will. So I'm not really worried about that. And I'm more just concerned about the tactics he was employing, the way you were putting him. Funnily enough, and who knows, I'm the only one that is claiming this is true, so I could just be making this up in retrospect and no one would even know. But we were going to do a knuckle down for Tim Tszyu, Michael Zarafa, which I think was in June or July of 21. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it sounds about right to me, yeah.
So I found like a couple of dot points on a Word file that I had saved from June 2021 called "How Do You Beat Tim Tszyu?" And I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back or anything like that, but the flaws have been there for a while. I had a dot point there. There is an opportunity to counter the wide right hand of Tszyu with the left hook / uppercut. Tim loves to back out of clinches and counter with the left hook, leaving himself susceptible to the right hand. So the punches that he was getting hit and hurt with, it's not like these openings all of a sudden just appeared in one fight. They've always been there. But the way that, this is why I'm talking about the footwork and his in and out movement that he used to use with Jeff. The holes were there. But if you're moving in and then moving out and moving to the side and moving away, out of range and out of danger, those holes can stay there because no one's going to be in reach to be able to capitalize on them. But with Tim's new style of, or tactics, as you put it, I shouldn't say style completely. That's a good correction you made on me then. But the way he's employing these tactics now and standing in front of guys, but still having the same holes, no wonder Bahkram was so confident. I didn't think it would happen this way, but I thought Tim had learned that lesson in the Gaucher fight. But yeah, it's not like these things are secrets. It's not like it's magic. It's just I'm so confused. I can't believe it happened. I don't know. This might sound a bit grandiose, but I don't think I've ever seen like an epic failure to. What would you say to improve, or like a bigger backwards step in Aussie boxing ever in my time?
Yeah, look, I'd have to think long and hard to think of something that compares. And as you rightly pointed out, I mean, we used to discuss Tim quite a bit early in his career. We'd finish watching one fight and we'd say, oh, geez, he's a bit susceptible in this area. And the next fight he would have improved dramatically in that area. And it really does seem that he's plateaued, if not got a bit complacent in terms of development and improvement there. Maybe it's a case of people have seen enough of him now that they sort of know how to read him a little bit better. I mean, that's a big call in just one fight. But again, as you rightly pointed out, that those holes are there, but they're absolutely magnified when you don't have the footwork to get away with it. And unfortunately for Tim, unfortunately for Bahkram, that's what happened on Saturday night in the States.
And did you I love hearing from Kostya. You know, he's still my favourite fighter. You know, he made me fall in love with the sport. You know, in 2001 with his Abjuda fight as a kid, I was obsessed with him. Still kind of am. So I was soaking up all the interviews and all the video clips on YouTube of Kostya talking and stuff. Did you see much of what he was saying?
I saw very little.
Okay, so in multiple different interviews with your Radio Rahims and bloody all those YouTubers over there and all that. Every single time they asked him about the fight, and again, granted, Kostya's not the coach, you know, he's not Igor Golubov, who knows what the team thought, but every time he kept saying, Tim needs to use his brain, he needs to use his brain, think, be patient, slow demolition, slow destruction, right? Kostya kept talking about it. So you have to think at some point he's given his thoughts to the team and Tim. Yep. Now, whether they had a different plan, I'm not sure, but at least one person in that team or adjacent to the team had those words of advice, and Tim did the exact opposite.
Playing devil's
advocate. I just can't believe it, mate. I can't believe it, Cuppers.
To play devil's advocate for a moment, do you think that perhaps the game plan and his ability to, absorb that advice was kind of thrown out the window when he got knocked down the first time and got concussed, that maybe
absolutely
his ability to sort of think it through and go, okay, I need to settle down, kind of went out the window?
100%. No, that's it. You corrected me on that. But the damage was done before the first knockdown anyway, sure. in the way he was doing it. So, but yes, you're absolutely right. There's no doubt he was in a great frame. And what a warrior. Like heavy knockdowns. He got up every time. He waded back in. Unbelievably courageous, you know, never looked for a way out. But also at the same time as well, and again, he was clearly concussed after the first one, so I don't mean to sound harsh or kick a guy while he's down, but like, imagine if that happened to Jai Opetaia in the first round. Right? I reckon Jai would get up and just have a move around the ring for a minute and a half, stay away, use his feet, you know, probably take the second and third off, and then sort of start getting back to work in the fourth when he gets his legs fully back and the bell has rung its last toll in his head and he can start thinking a bit more clearly. You know, again, unbelievably hard. I'm assuming that's what Jai would do. Who knows what any fighter would do in that situation? And Tim was brave as hell, but you know, we've seen great world-class fighters get rocked before and they have a plan B. They have a second gear, you know? And that's the other thing with Tim. And I feel bad for sort of, well, I guess I am harshly grading him here, but Tim's never needed a plan B.
Well, that's right.
You know, I'm not sure if the team has ever prepared one. If they have, he's never needed to use it. Sure as hell needed to use it today. I hope they had it prepared, but who knows? But man, it's a harsh lesson for the whole team. Every time they've gone to America, there's been some sort of disaster for the entire team. You know, it's unbelievable. They can't catch a break over there.
And look, you're absolutely right about having a plan B and being able to use it. I mean, it was so evident with Tim trying to fire back that his reflexes weren't there, so his shots are wide, and even though I think there was a couple of shots he snuck through, just the reaction times aren't there. And watching that back, it was just, you could just go, it's just a matter of time here. Why aren't you doing something to delay the punches to the head and clear your own head and soak up the clock, whether that's clinching or moving around or finding a way. You've got to have a way to find a way. I wonder also if Tim has ever been in that situation before. The Gaucher knockdown was a bit of a flash knockdown. But again, I thought he would have learnt from that knockdown too. He was too quick to his feet for me as well. With every knockdown, he wasn't just sort of taking that extra time with a knee on the canvas to sort of recover a little bit physically, but also think mentally about what he has to do next. I think when you jump to your feet and you're looking at the bloke across from the ring and you're nodding at the referee, I know you still get your 8 count or whatever, but you're already straight back into combat mode. You haven't had much of that little mental break to kind of just reassess what's going on and what you should be doing next. And on the mental thing, how do you mentally recover from a beatdown like that? That's probably a big question that their team are going to have to really think about long and hard too. And, do you give him 6 months off and sort of rebuild him, or knowing him, he'll want to be back in the ring sooner rather than later. But, can you convince the kid to pump the brakes and just kind of rebuild slowly and come back into it that way? I don't know.
Absolutely, mate. And that's a great little change of gear, because I did want to speak to you specifically about this aspect of it. I know you're incredibly fascinated with like the mental side of boxing and fighters. And a lot of the times in your articles that you write when you interview fighters, you have procured some questions specifically about their mental state and how they were mentally approaching a certain fight or a matchup or a hard training block or whatever it may be. So, and the question is, how does Tim mentally bounce back, as you rightfully put? But it would also seem the messaging out of the team, like I read something during fight week that Tim was in the process of, or wanting to be in the process of, buying a house in America, and essentially the word from Glenn Jennings was he was going to live in America and just come home for when Nikita fights or whatever it may be, whatever the setup was going to be. And it seemed like COVID really stunted Tim's plans to go to America. He's always talking about America. USA, he made the $90 t-shirts, It seemed like he's outgrown Australia years ago at this point. He doesn't want to fight there. He doesn't want to be the big fish in the small pond. At least that's the impression I'm getting. I mean, 2 losses in America, one under super unfortunate and weird circumstances. This one where he just got absolutely poleaxed and was barely competitive for a single second of that fight. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but, the result cannot be denied. Now he kind of has to go back to Australia. So when we add that into that mental layer and that context of what type of frame of mind is he in, how do you feel like he's going to combat all that? You've spoken to him a few times, I'm sure. I've never seen anything besides what's my MF and name or whatever. I don't know the guy. How do you think all this is going to impact on him?
I think it's going to be really hard for him to take that backward step. I remember interviewing him face-to-face once in Melbourne when he might have been 7 fights into his pro career, 6 or 7 fights, something like that. And even back then he was incredibly driven and was talking about, wanting to fight in big fights in Vegas and essentially saying, this is my destiny. This is what I'm going to do. And even back then he had, I'd consider, grandiose plans. He was talking about, he wanted to fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who I think was certainly a super middleweight, maybe even a light heavyweight then, because he saw that as obviously his old man fought Chavez Sr., and he saw that as a sort of a continuation of that rivalry. And even though Chavez Jr. was kind of tapering off, he had these big dreams of big fights under the bright lights of Vegas. So I think to have that dream sort of dashed to a large degree, or it's at least denied, is going to be as hard as any part of this for him to handle, to say, I'm going to keep pushing forward and towards these goals, that he's going to have to reassess them and really, I think, create a brand new roadmap to achieve those goals.
Yeah. So he has to come back. He's not going to get a third crack in America after 2 losses, is he? Surely the next move is Zerafa?
That would seem to be the...
Could you imagine Zerafa sitting on his couch on Sunday watching, just going, oh, show me the money. Let's go.
I did see I saw some quotes from Zerafa on social media immediately afterwards, and then I saw an interview with him. He was asked if he watched the fight, and he said, I got better things to do with my Sundays.
Oh, man.
But again, yep.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, though, I don't mind that move. What else are they going to do?
Yep.
It's a big fight for Zerafa, too. I've got a soft spot for Zerafa. I don't know the guy. I've never met him, but anyone who listens to the pod knows the guy's a warrior. I can't not respect him. But if who knows what state of his career and levels Rafa's at as well. This would be the biggest question mark main event in Australian boxing history, wouldn't it? Like, where are these guys at? But if the version of Zerafa that fought Isaac Hardman turns up on fight night, and Tim, the same Tim that fought Bahkram, turns up, mate, I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I'll put money on Zerafa. Zerafa's winning that fight, 100%.
Absolutely. I think that I don't even know if it's the right comeback fight for Tim, to be honest. Because, as you pointed out, Zerafa, if he can revert to that sort of form, is still a very dangerous fighter. And if Tim can't show improvements in one training camp without an interim fight just to sort of bed in some of those stylistic changes, then he could just fall back into type against Zerafa and walk into something big himself again. I don't know. So I would have had Tim all day and twice on Sundays against Zerafa before this weekend just gone. But after this and all those variables about how you recover mentally, the changes you need to make or you should be making in the way you the style you apply in your fights. I think there's a lot of question marks over just how that fight would go. I guess I'd still make Tim sort of a 60-40 favourite, or 70-30. But before this weekend, I would have made it like 90-10. So it does seem to even up the scales a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see if they make that fight. And obviously, Zerafa's got the deal with no limit now. So maybe they put Nikita in with Zerafa and have Tim fight someone else on the card. And if Zerafa gets past Nikita, then match them sort of around September next year. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've got to be carried away with my 100% Zerafa wins that fight call. But you know what I mean? Like, if Tim goes in reckless power puncher, standing straight in front of guys, Zerafa's a great counter puncher, well, especially was in the Hardman fight. Who knows what version of him we're going to get next time he fights a seemingly world-class opponent. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. But moving forward, mate, you mentioned earlier that... that Tim's probably going to want to fight real soon. I'm no doctor. I'm no trainer of fighters. I don't know, but geez, like, he took some shots. He was rocked. Just his facial expressions when he got up. Yeah, and he did get up. All credit to him. Like, what a warrior. But the look on his face and his eyes were he didn't know where he was. But he got hurt real bad in that fight. It looked like to me. I'm no doctor. I'm sure they're going to do all the neurological testing they need to do, but personally, I wouldn't be angry if we didn't see him till the second half of next year. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I think he needs a break. With Tim's willingness to always want to back up and jump in, what do you reckon they'll sort of come to in terms of a time frame for his next fight?
Look, I think they'll rest him until at least April, hopefully longer. And the challenge, again, is the fighter wants to fight, but you're there to also protect your fighter and develop your fighter and work in their best interest. So sometimes you have to disagree with your fighter and put your case forward and say, no, this is not just what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is why it's going to benefit you. And show it as part of a larger plan that again, I reckon Tim would be really hard to convince of that. He had to sit out longer than he wanted from that cut this year, and just on that too, if that cut didn't take us long to heal, he would have fought Virgil Ortiz Jr. And what do you think he would have done to that version of Tszyu?
Maybe something similar, yeah. Jeez. See, but that's actually a great. Sorry, Coxie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so he might have actually dodged a bullet with the cut taking a little bit longer to heal, although wasn't much of a bullet to dodge when he got nailed in 3 anyway. But
yeah, I mean, I didn't even think of that until you just said his name then. But Virgil Ortiz, very front foot fighter, super aggressive. But look at the way he does it compared to the way Tim does it. Virgil Ortiz is so much more defensively responsible, even though he still got knocked down twice in his last fight. But whereas the way Tim does it with the wide shoulders and the wide hands and the square stance, it's just like, seemingly all he relies on is his reactionary head movement. But you can't see them all every time, unfortunately. And
Yep.
I don't know. Crazy. Sorry, I'm just rambling. I still can't
No,
believe
you're
it, Coxie.
and again, that's why I think, for a lot of reasons, and one that goes to your point is why it was so wrong for him to try and slug it out with Bahkram after he got knocked down, because all of those reaction times are out of whack then, both defensively and offensively. So it just magnified those holes even more, and we saw it happen.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, geez, not too much. Well, definitely some nice analysis from you there, Coxie. Definitely not from me. It'll probably take me another 2 weeks to just actually believe what I saw with my own eyes that did actually happen, that I cannot believe happened.
Look, if in doubt, mate, just claim it's fake news and move on. Just don't even process it. Just put it to the back of your mind and claim it never happened, mate.
It's a foolproof political technique, I hear, so I might have to employ it. But, mate, on the undercard, we had another Aussie in action. Mateo Tapia got a draw over 10 rounds with Endry Saavedra. Mate, what a fight. What did you think about this one?
I actually missed it on the day, and I caught up on it, finished watching it about 15 minutes before we got on this pod, so it's very, very front of mind.
Perfect time to ask you then.
Look, I was very surprised at the draw. I thought it was a fun slugfest. I just didn't think Tapia was really in control at any stage of the fight. Like he won some rounds, but they were still close rounds. It was a fun slugfest. Tapia's corner seemed very frustrated with him sort of standing and admiring his work and getting nailed back there. Even without the knockdowns, I thought that Tapia probably lost that. So I was a bit surprised with the 3 knockdowns that it was ruled a draw, and one judge had him ahead by 2 points. So what were your thoughts?
Unbelievable fight. Again, Aussie warrior spirit on show. I wish we would be outclassing guys, but it's easier said than done. But I thought it was an excellent action fight. There was a couple of things that I was a little bit surprised and confused by from Tapia, but it's all learning. The number one thing that blew me away, because I did not see the Isaac Hardman Endry Saavedra fight, because I voted with my wallet that time. That card should not have been a pay-per-view, and No Limit aren't getting a cent out of my wallet. They want it desperately. I am not giving it to them. They can get stuffed. So I boycotted that card. So I was going in pretty, probably with a lot less familiarity than most Aussie fans with Saavedra. I could not believe how tough that guy is. The
Super
shots
tough.
he was wearing, and just absolutely zero effect. Not even any marking on his face, nothing. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is this guy like the toughest guy out of bloody Venezuela in the last 50 years? It's absolutely unbelievable. And like that right hand that Tapia knocked him down with in the 4th or the 5th or whatever it was, like that would knock out anyone. Like he was moving onto the right hand. How it didn't fracture his neck in the process, like that was an absolute bomb. And he just got up and continued on. It was unbelievable. But I did want to ask you a quick question, because I wasn't scoring it live, but I thought the rounds were they were close, but I kind of had made up my mind on the way through. But I tried to score it later because I was thinking, oh, gee, a draw's pretty lucky here. I thought Saavedra did enough, especially with that 9th round knockdown. But so I went through and scored it all, but I could not remember who won the 8th. So I just put it 10-10. Who do you reckon won the 8th?
Oh, I didn't sit down and score round by round. I was just going on the eye test. I thought Saavedra banked the first 4 rounds.
Okay.
And he obviously had some good rounds later in the fight as well, and had those 3 knockdowns. So obviously he won that later round where he knocked down Tapia as well. So I sort of thought I think the first round was close, and I sort of thought he got on top in the second round and then kind of went on with it. So yeah, with the knockdowns, even if you give Saavedra 4 rounds, he's still got those 3 knockdowns in there to work with. So I'm not sure who won the 8th off the top of my head.
Yeah, I couldn't remember either. I'll have to go back and watch it. But anyway, so I had the 8th 10-10 because I just couldn't remember, but I still had it 94-93 Saavedra. But if you give him that round, it's 94-92. So I thought the draw was as lucky as Tapia could get. But funnily enough, looking at the cards, if Tapia didn't get knocked down in the ninth and just lost 10-9, he would have won on both of those cards and wins the fight. So it might have been one of those ones that was very different from TV to actually being ringside. But what are some of the things you mentioned that a couple of things tactically that you were questioning a little bit with Mateo? Well, what did you notice? Obviously, just watching it half an hour ago or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was probably, in a weird way, the bigger pure puncher in there. But Saavedra's just phenomenal. There were punches he got hit with that didn't budge him. That not even talking about the punch that knocked him down, but shots that were just flush and would have put any other bloke out cold. And he just had a tremendous chin and a tremendous will as well to push through that adversity. I just think that Tapia, when he did have success, would kind of pause and regroup and not keep the pressure up a little bit. And maybe because he's used to hitting people with those shots and they don't come firing back immediately, whereas Saavedra was just, you got me with that, I'm going to throw back 3, 4, 5 punches and maul you on the inside and make it very uncomfortable for you. So I think stylistically it was something that Tapia perhaps wasn't prepared for or hadn't seen before, that type of relentless pressure that you often get from those real tough guys from places like Venezuela. I do know that Tapia as well, that there were some head clashes in there, and I think that's what sort of busted up his eye as well. So I don't know how much that affected his vision as well as just his confidence when they were coming in and clashing in close. It's the sort of fight I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch, because the first fight was fantastic, and I think that they're the sort of fights that, for people who now might be sort of 1 foot off the Tapia train, they want to see him come back and dominate a guy like that, rather than just kind of step to the side and fight a guy of a similar level, but maybe not as stylistically difficult.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. I agree, and there's no doubt in my mind that the fighter that can make the more adjustments if there were to be a rematch, which hopefully there will be, is Tapia for sure. Sometimes if you can get in a real hard fight and learn some lessons and not have an L on your record, you've got a D. That's kind of best case scenario. So no doubt it's going to make him a better fighter going forward. I just selfishly wish he didn't have to walk through so much damage to get that lesson. But I thought it was a brilliant fight. One thing that kind of was really surprising to me was just the lack of purpose behind Tapia's jab. Like a lot of it was just seemed to be, and I'm sure a more technically astute person could give me the reason for this, but so much, it was pouring with it so much. I think in an effort to set up the right hand or the right uppercut and just maintain a bit of space and distance from the forward, like relentless forward pressure Saavedra was putting on. But as I was watching it, I was like, man, Andrew Maloney has such a brilliant ability to be able to run guys onto a real stiff jab. He's dropped multiple fighters with it before. So I was just thinking, man, a couple of times Floyd kept Canelo off him all those years ago with the jab, and he can't really punch, but a good stiff, purposeful jab, just to mix in between the pouring and setting up the right hand. I just felt like maybe got neglected a little bit, but again, maybe there was a reason for that. But that sort of speaks to the adjustments that I think Tapia can make going forward. And now he probably already knew he was tough. Now he knows he's tough.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable amount of damage. Let's never get that happen again, please. Obviously that's never the goal, but we hate seeing our Aussies go through that type of stuff. But I 100% agree with you. I think a rematch is sometimes the whole immediate rematch thing is just massively overplayed. In this case, I think it makes all the sense in the world. And for Saavedra, probably because I thought he should have got the nod.
Yeah, look, and it was an entertaining fight too. That was a fight that just, in terms of pure entertainment, you could sell again very, very easily. Just on what you said about the jab too, I thought Bahkram had a fantastic jab in the fight with Tszyu. He'd flick with it and then throw a stiff one and walk Tim into it, as you were saying there. And I just thought that variety of the jab is something that you don't always see from boxers, that there's many different ways that you can throw it and you can use it. And if you have a few different versions of it and just keep mixing it up, it keeps your opponent guessing. You keep that range, you keep that distance, and you still got that right hand to land over the top if the angle's there for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. I'm starting to calm down a little bit. I'm starting to get off my high horse. So I'm a bit wound up. Haven't pod for a while. I was fired up over that result. But yeah, well, what a performance by Mateo Tapia. Win, lose, or draw was what an entertaining card. Sometimes those PBC cards are a bit up and down. I know this was a pay-per-view here. It was a free one over there. Mate, I mean, $70 for 3 fights, a bit steep, but I would have liked to have had more fights included on the telecast. But I mean, beggars can't be choosers. But yeah, what a great way to spend a Sunday lunchtime.
No, it was good. And being on the east coast of the States there, it was on quite early here. I think the main event was, about 1 o'clock or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, done and dusted and off to the pub by 3 o'clock.
Oh, perfect. Well, mate, as I mentioned, then I haven't done a pod for ages, so I just wanted to go back on the last performance a couple of weeks back from Jai Opataya. God, this guy just continually. I know you've got the jacket, the Jai Opataya jacket. You've got the merch, so
I need the bucket hat, the fisherman's bucket hat, the complete the ensemble.
Yeah, you guys have got your own little segment, offshoot talking tackle Ring Magazine section. So no one's a bigger fan of him than you, mate. I mean, the only word I could sort of think of for his performance against Jack Massey was flawless, really.
Absolutely. Again, you talk about boxers that, and they're few and far between, that don't rest on their laurels, continue to improve and continue to deliver better and better performances. And Jai just ticks all those boxes. I know a word that you like to use for him as well is dynamic, and he just is. Like, I thought Massey, having gone the distance with Joseph Parker and also Riakporé as well, I thought he'd be tough enough to. I know he's defensively flawed, Massey, but he's proven to have a good chin, and just with the speed and the angles and the punches you don't see coming from Jai, he just dissected him and just sucked all the fight out of him very quickly.
And this, I'm only just realizing this now when I'm thinking about it, because I haven't thought about that fight for a while. But like, remember in the first round, probably for the first minute and a half or so, Jai was bouncing. Jai was playing with the range. Jai was getting his timing down. He's figuring out how quick the reactions are of Jack Massey.
Yep.
Then he started to settle and walk him down. He didn't just come out and walk him down and run into something, He figured it out first. And because he's IQ, he's on another level for that weight division, He figured it out real quick. But, sorry, did you text me?
No, I didn't, mate.
Oh, sorry. I thought you might need to go to the toilet. Yeah, Jai's IQ on another level. He just figured it out so quick. But the point being, he didn't just wade in and walk into something stupid that he shouldn't get caught with, which to me is why I think Jai's our best fighter that we've got. But yeah, what a performance.
Speaking of cruiserweights, I was having a chat to Floyd Masson yesterday, and we were talking about his preparation for his next fight. We can circle back to him later if you want, but we were talking about sparring partners and what you get out of sparring, and he said that the main thing for him is to get his fitness and timing right, and really in a fight, it's about how quickly you can adjust to what your opponent brings, and I think Jai does that better than anyone. He has that look. He's got his own skills that he brings to the table, an immense toolkit of skills that he's got there, but he still has a look. He still gauges that range and the response times and just what the response typically is from his opponent. And then once he gets a read on them, the Americans like to say, he's downloading information. Well, that's what Jai does, and he's able to do it a lot quicker than most because of the talent that he has.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And I think I need you to clarify for me on this, because I know it's a part of your job and you have to follow the sanctioning bodies and mandatories and all that sort of stuff. I try my best to avoid that because it just frustrates me and bores me to death. But has Jai already got a mandatory being enforced on him?
Yes. The IBF want him to
He
face...
just fought.
I know. Well, he had an exemption to fight Massey.
Okay.
So the number one contender, whose name escapes me, a German bloke or a bloke who fights out of Germany, he has to fight him by, I think it's like January 29 or something like that. So only
Okay.
like, yeah, really, really quick turnaround. I think it was sort of a 3 month gap between the fights, or 3.5 months or something like that. I don't know the status of that, whether something can be arranged, like a step aside, or if the sanctioning body will even allow that. I'm a little bit like you. I don't follow the politics of it too deeply. But look, it might be a fight that Jai just has to take, and moves on from there. Certainly, there doesn't seem to be a lot of big fights in the division for him immediately. And we do know he's a fighter who likes to stay active, so maybe he takes the opportunity to stay in the ring, and then looks forward to bigger and better things late 2025.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a good point. If he has to back up that quickly, I mean, it's the perfect fight, the massive performance with seemingly zero injuries and zero damage taken. So, yeah, as you've always said, why sit on the bench when you can stay sharp and earn money? So
Yeah,
maybe
look, I
that's
mean,
the way it goes.
the only thing is, do you want to train through Christmas and be in camp
Yeah.
through there? I know that obviously he's got a young family and things like that. But again, he strikes me as the type of bloke that isn't one to turn down a fight. So,
Yeah.
maybe it'd be right up his alley.
And I'm putting you on the spot, Cuppers, but it's all good either way. But is there any? I was struggling to rack my brain for like standout Aussie performances, either at home or overseas or whatever it may be over the last couple of months. As mentioned, haven't done a pod for about 3 or 4 months now. Is there anything that sort of sticks out in your mind? I was struggling to come up with anything, and I'm sure there have been. I just have a terrible memory.
Um, Sorry, going back how many months?
I don't know, a couple.
Okay. And probably because it's front of mind with me too. I really like Floyd Masson's performance against Chucky Francis.
Yep.
After a year out of the ring, coming off a loss, I thought he looked super sharp. He showed a great deal of variety. He pushed forward. He stood back and counterpunched. He worked the body really well and broke him down in 4 rounds. I thought that showed what Floyd can do at his best. He didn't get sucked into a brawl against a bloke that wanted a brawl, and just showed a bit more maturity in the way he went about that fight. And I think that shows a lot of positive things to look forward to with Floyd. His biggest flaw, I guess, is that he does like a brawl, and even in winning efforts, he can sometimes brawl too much. And in his loss last year, that's really what cost him, was getting against a very good fighter, but still he could have made that easier and perhaps taken the Belgium opponent later into the fight and outboxed his way to a decision win. So, I mean, we'll never know, but I did think that fight was one of the better ones over the past couple of months.
No, good call, mate. And it seems like you've got Floyd front of mind at the moment. So
I do.
I had a look on BoxRec. It wasn't listed on BoxRec, but I believe there's some fight news for Floyd coming up relatively soon.
Yeah, absolutely. He's fighting Mateusz Masternak in Poland on November 16th. He told me they literally only found out about the fight a couple of weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks before the actual fight date there. People will probably be familiar with the name Masternak. Maybe they can't quite place him. He's been around, he's, I think, 37, 38 years old. He's been a pro for probably, I don't know, 18 years or something, like a long time. But he's still a very capable boxer. Last December, he was stopped in 8 rounds by Chris Billam-Smith. He didn't answer the bell to start the 8th after suffering a rib injury, but he was up 5 rounds to 2 on 2 of the judges' scorecards at the time. So he was boxing really well in that fight. Sorry?
In England, so that tells you
Yes.
something too. Yeah.
Yes, I think the third card was even, but the 5 rounds to 2 I thought was fair. Maybe you could have even given him an extra round in there, but no, he was doing really well in that fight, and without the rib injury, he only needs to win 2 more rounds in the back half of the fight, and he's got it on the card. So he's still got a lot left in the tank. He's a crafty operator. Yeah, look, I really like the fight. I think it's a good test for where Floyd is. I don't know. being over there, I guess you make Masternak the favourite, but Floyd at his best can give him all sorts of problems. So yeah, we'll wait and see. It's only just around the corner, so it's kind of been one of those surprise ones that you hear about not far out. So it's easy to stay excited about it. You're not hearing about it 3 months, 4 months down the track, and you kind of overanalyze it. It's sort of one that creeps up and can be a little surprise package. I'm quite looking forward to that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously the Aussie connection with Jason Waitley and Masternak, which was before the Bill and Smith fight as well. So, yeah, massive opportunity for Floyd Besson, and seemingly so pretty quickly after the loss. He only had one fight in between, and he's right back in there again. But yeah, that'll be hopefully there'll be some sort of Australian TV for that as the date gets closer. I'm sure it's all being worked out at the moment. But no, massive news, mate. And when does your article drop with Floyd?
Well, I've been working on it today before the pod, so hopefully I'll get that finished tonight and get that filed, and should be up, if not tomorrow, certainly by the end of the week.
Beautiful. Good stuff, mate. But all right, mate. Well, we've got some fights coming up. There's what I hope is going to be a cracker this weekend, but I just don't know. But before that, I was looking on BoxRec over in Fiji on October 26th. We've got Lockie O'Shea and Tonga fighting in Fiji. Who would have thought? So I doubt there'll be a stream, but our boys are staying busy.
No, it's good they're staying busy. And yeah, I wasn't aware of that fight, so thanks for the heads up.
I only heard about it about 40 minutes ago. So good luck to the boys over there. But yeah, Jack Catterall, Regis Prograis. I think this will be on DAZN. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's DAZN. Cool. There's not too much else on the card that I saw. I looked at it really deeply, but geez, a couple of years ago, this would have been a mouth-watering fight. Prograis coming off that just annihilation by Devin Haney. We really don't know where he's at. Catterall seemingly career high point. It's decisive victory over Josh Taylor, even though Bob Arum believes otherwise. Mate, how do you where do you see the betting wise on this? I know you're a bit of a gambling man. How would you set the line for this fight?
Yeah, look, you've got to make Catterall a comfortable favourite, like a $1.20 or a $1.25. I just think he's grown an extra leg in recent years. Actually, probably since that first fight with Taylor, you've seen his confidence grow, his ability grow, whereas Prograis's been largely inactive and really, I don't know if I'm being too harsh in saying he laid an egg against Haney, but he just had no answers for Haney, and it was just, and I'm a big Prograis fan. I love the way he boxes. I just don't know what he's got left or what version of Haney Prograis we're going to see in the ring there. To be honest, I just don't think Prograis is going to have much of a chance. I think he can maybe make some rounds competitive, but Catterall will sort of outwork him, maul him on the inside, and he's just got more going for him at this stage of his career, Catterall, I reckon.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to disagree with any of that, but I never really was a Catterall fan. I sort of have become one. He has impressed the hell out of me. I guess that's probably all those years that Liam Parrow was linked to him. So I'm like, he's the other guy. I'm not following that guy. I'm a Parrow guy, you know. But put the Australian flag off my back, and I end up becoming a fan. But yeah, but it is so hard to know what version of Regis Prograis we're going to get. I think he might be 35, possibly even older. At 140, I mean, geez, you don't really see a lot of guys get success, into their mid-30s. So it's going to be a tough one, but hopefully you can roll back the clock. But I'm excited nonetheless. A free show on a Sunday morning. I'll wake up and watch it for sure.
Why not? Something to do while you're having your cornflakes.
There you go. And mate, we've got November's a little bit of a weird month, but there's actually a pretty good card. One of those Smithies from Toowoomba shows on Friday, the 8th of November. John Manu's back, staying super busy against Ricky Nato. Dylan Biggs is back against a guy called Kamau Kant. But interestingly enough, Jackson Griffiths, who's 14-0. I haven't seen him. Maybe I've seen one of his fights. I can't remember. He's fighting Miguel Vasquez. Now, that just sounded like a stock standard Latino name to me, but I looked it up. Are you familiar with Miguel Vasquez off the top of your head?
If it's the Miguel Vasquez I'm thinking of, he used to have a title about 10 years ago at a much lighter weight.
I didn't go
Yes,
that
no.
far back on his box rec, but he's essentially a professional opponent for travel. He's
Okay.
44-13. He's only been stopped 4 times. Just going back in, he fought Josh Taylor in 2017 in Scotland, fought Ahara Davies, fought Bardazi Dukenbayev, who ended up having that run on Showbox and then on Showtime. Fought Lewis Ritson in England, Gary Cully. Who else was in there? Anyway, he's a professional opponent. Every time he travels, he loses. He wins fights when he's in Mexico, but he's durable and tough. So I think I've only seen highlights of Jackson Griffiths, but this looks like a fantastic sort of litmus test for him. Really interesting matchmaking. I'm glad that he get a guy like this out here. When I saw it, and I only saw it earlier today, last night, it reminded me of when they were able to get Kobe Kono out for Jason Maloney.
Yep.
And it was like, oh, this is fantastic. We can see a guy that's obviously not at the top of his game anymore, but was proven at the sort of worldish level once upon a time, and we get to see how our guy steps up and goes against it. So it seems to me to be like one of those fights. But when I saw it on paper, I sort of my eyes lit up. I reckon that's a great move promotionally and career-wise for Jackson.
Absolutely. And the pennies just dropped. I do know who Miguel Vasquez is. He used to have the IBF lightweight title, and he beat Australia's own Lenny Zappa about 10 years ago.
I did not go back that far. There you go, mate. You were spot on. Good memory. That's elite. Okay. I've got to get
Says the bloke who just box wrecked that while you were talking.
Oh, don't give it away. It's the beauty of audio only, mate. No one can see your Google stuff.
I had to know if it was the same guy. I had an inkling it was, yeah.
Okay, so there's an Australian connection too, so I'm sure that just got people even a little bit more interested in that fight. But we move on to the next day. So Saturday, the 9th of November Australian time, we got a not a bad top rank card, which I don't think we're going to be getting, but we can listen to it on the radio, do what we got to do. Keyshawn Davis actually wanted this fight. Gustavo Lemos, who should have got the win against Richard Hitchens last time out, dropping down to 135, his more natural weight. I love this fight. I love that Keyshawn wants it too.
Yeah, again, it's good to see kids keen for these sort of tests. I think it's a pretty even matchup on paper, and I think the styles will mesh well. And I'm looking forward to that one too.
Absolutely. On the undercard, Ra'is Salim is back from his loss to Sam Goodman, which seems like ages ago now. And we've also got Abdullah Mason, who's got a ton of hype on him on the undercard too. I didn't recognize his opponent's name. That doesn't necessarily indicate anything either way. But nice little top rank show on a Saturday Australian time for us coming up on the 9th of November. Now, later on that night, against TBA, unfortunately, but Vegas Larfield's scheduled to come back. Speak about a guy that we haven't seen for a while. Do you have any sort of inside word on the reason for Vegas sitting out so long after that loss to Albert Nolan?
No, I'm not sure if it was just a chance to sort of refresh and regroup, or if there might have been maybe some injuries out of that fight that needed to heal, or what the case is. But it's certainly good to see him back. He's a very talented kid, and hopefully he can put that loss behind him and find his feet again, because he's an entertaining boxer to watch.
Yeah, because remember there was talk of there being a rematch, but then I guess we haven't seen either guy since. So it kind of seems weird where there was momentum, and now it was like when I saw Vegas's name on Boxrec, I was like, oh yeah, it just I know it's a very what have you done for me lately type of sport, out of sight, out of mind, but it's just hard to keep track of what is happening, let alone guys that aren't competing. It's even harder to keep, in the forefront of your mind. So hopefully Vegas and even Albert Nolan too can get back in the mix soon, because that was a brilliant fight.
It was a great fight.
Last year or earlier this year?
Oh, good question. I want to say last year.
Okay.
But I stand to be corrected. Someone will tell me it was 6 months ago.
And then the following day, Sunday, November 10th, live and free on DAZN, Boots Ennis is being forced into one of the more pointless mandatory title defenses against Karen Chikadzian that he beat I don't know, a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
He won every round, 12-0. I don't know, whatever. But Bam Rodriguez is back as the co-main, and another Australian connection fighting the man that recently got the W over Andrew Maloney. I thought Andrew Maloney won the fight, but on BoxRec, he's got a W next to his name, Pedro Guevara. What are you excited for? Like, I'm pretty sure the Boots fight, unfortunately, it's no fault of his own. We're not too pumped for, but the Bam Guevara fight, Coxie, has this one got you pumped up?
Yeah, it has in a way, because I'd pay to watch Bam hit the heavy bag, So, so any time you get to see Bam in action, it's a little bit like Jai Pattaya. It doesn't matter how one-sided or dominant the fights are. You just see moves and talent and technique that is just so rare that it just blows you away every time. I don't think many people would give Guevara much of a chance there, and I'm certainly in that camp too. I think he's seems to be tough and durable enough, but you can just see him getting outclassed at every turn. But again, I don't mind it because it's Bam Rodriguez. Who doesn't like a bit of Bam?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And had that decision gone the other way, for Andrew, it could have been Andrew Maloney in there too. I mean,
Yes.
sliding doors, unbelievable. But yeah, Bam definitely the class of that division, and working his way up the pound for pound rankings too. One of my favourite guys. Now we move on to the following week, Saturday the 16th of November Australian time. I don't even want to talk about anything on this card except for this fight because it's just so weird. But anyway, another one of our favourite fighters, Australia's own Dana Coolwell, fighting big-name top-ranked prospect Bruce Carrington. I know recently you've had a bit of dealings with Dana and the wider team and that sort of thing, Coxie. So how pumped are you, mate? And is there any extra info you can give us on how this fight came to be?
Yeah, look, if the team are to be believed, they're in with a red hot shot. They before they went out to the States, they said Dan has been training really well. He's in tip-top condition. They've known about this fight for a long time. It was about to be announced for the same card, for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson card, before it was pushed back.
Don't say it.
Sorry, I just had to put the context around why it's been sort of under wraps.
Too much of a professional, mate.
But yeah, I was aware that this fight had been was being discussed way back then, and obviously it's been officially announced now. So they've had plenty of time to come up with a game plan for Carrington, who of course struggled mightily in his last fight against Sagawa, I thought. So I think they're licking their chops even more now. They can see in real time things that they believe they can exploit there. It's an 8-round bout rather than 10 rounds. 10 rounds would have suited Dana more. But it is what it is. Dana will just have to start a bit quicker and try and assert that dominance a little bit earlier in the fight to make sure that he can bank enough rounds against a guy who's clearly going to be the A side there. So that's probably the challenge for Dana, is to not just do the better work, but make sure there's enough of it to really convince the judges and not have them lean the other way if the rounds are a little bit close.
And this is globally free on Netflix, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Wow. You'd have to think this would be one of the more watched fights of the last, well, I don't know, maybe ever.
Well, that's right.
Accessibility and the zero cost.
And from Coolwell's team, and I'm sure every other fighter on the card and every other fighter that wanted to be on the card, it's that exposure that you're getting that really makes it worthwhile. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. Say what you want about the main event, there's going to be people watching it. And the accessibility through Netflix, which is a platform that I'd hate to think how many hundreds of millions of people have globally. Yeah. It's not like signing up to DAZN or ESPN Plus for just your sports. It's out there in a lot of households. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for Dana to really say, this is who I am, and make a statement and shoot his name out into the stratosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, massive best wishes and good luck to Team Coolwell and Dana in particular for fight night. But yeah, well, that's the main event for me. Also got the KD Taylor Amanda Serrano rematch, which obviously deserves to be talked about, but I just can't stand the YouTube gimmicks. It just kills me. But there are a couple of actually legit good fights on there. But then we move the next day. This is a good weekend of boxing, Coxie. We've got the, I don't know what they're calling it in Riyadh season, but like the Latin Fury or something, are they calling it? I don't know.
It's something like that.
Some weird name to it. But we got Chris Billum-Smith and Gilberto Ramirez. Oscar Collazo, your man, is fighting the newly returning knockout CP freshly rather quickly off his win over our own Alex Winwood. Talk about a courageous performance again by another Aussie, Alex Winwood, in a tough loss. Jose Ramirez and Arnold Barboza, which feels like it's been on the docket for years, is finally happening. And weirdly enough, William Zepeda is fighting Tevin Farmer, who's coming off a loss for some reason. But
that last fight doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Yeah. I think Turkey just really wants Zepeda on one of his cards. So
yep,
you got to get whatever. What's the standout there for you, mate, in those top three?
Oh, good question. Who did you say Collazo was fighting again?
CP Freshmart.
Look, probably that fight because, again, like everyone, we all have our favourites. And Luis Collazo is one of my favourites. He wears a great ethnic hat and he can fight a bit too. And CP Freshmart is I wasn't sure sort of how much he had left when he fought coming into the Winwood fight, and he proved he's still got plenty left in the tank. So I kind of like that fight. I think CP Freshmart will be up for it, and he'll make Collazo work. And I think Collazo will get the win, but I think it'll go late and have some entertaining exchanges in there.
And I think this is for the first time there's ever going to be a Ring Magazine title at minimum weight, isn't it?
I believe you're correct there.
Yeah. So history is on the line. That's amazing. And of course, we'll have our eyes on Billum-Smith and Ramirez. Especially with some Jai Opetaia implications. But I don't know. I just don't think Ramirez has looked that good at cruiserweight. I like Billum-Smith here. I like Jai over both of them pretty comfortably. But I don't know. The Americans seem to be pretty wrapped on Ramirez up at 200 pounds, but I don't know. I'm not convinced yet.
I still need to see more of him at the weight to sort of sign off on him. And I think it's one of those fights, and obviously we always say it, but it two very different styles, and it's who's going to be able to impose their style on their opponent there. And Billum-Smith knows how to slow down the pace and kind of use that awkward style that he's got to dictate exchanges, and obviously Ramirez is going to want to be coming forward and throwing a ton of punches. So yeah, look, it's an interesting one stylistically, and the wider implications for the division is obviously what's of most interest to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I'm pretty sure that one's free. That's not a pay-per-view, but we know how DAZN like to do the old bait and switch, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for some good news. But, mate, just another one I wanted to get your opinion on. Saturday, the 30th of November, it's the final PBS show of the year. Earlier in the year when the PBS launched, you were one of the ones that I thought had the most detailed coverage of and explanations, and to get out to the fans. What is the PBS? What's the, not the mission statement, but what's the plan? What are they doing? You let us know that it's going to be the March to November season, if you like. So this will be the finale of the season and sort of that first season coming to an end. It's going to be down in Melbourne on a Kings of Combat show with Kareem Matala fighting Joshua Francis, Munro Matet, Jake Clegg, Kai Hodgson's fighting Mike Whitehead, which I'm really looking forward to. I think we're going to learn a lot about Kai Hodgson there. I'm really excited for that one. Peter Salasui and Louis Masters, I believe. There's a couple more on the card there, but more widely, mate. What have you made of the almost completed first season of the PBS?
I think it's been very successful. I understand from having spoken to Glenn Hosking, sort of communicating with him probably through the middle of the year, that 7plus were very happy with the viewing numbers that they were getting there. I don't know if they've dropped off since then. I wouldn't have thought so. They seem to have established a good ground base of viewers. I thought the matchups have been pretty good too. Like they're not big names even in Australia a lot of the time, but they've been pretty consistently watchable fights. I like the format. I like the shorter fight night, the more explosive sort of fights, and far less just commentary going on for half an hour between bouts and things like that. So they move through quickly. You kind of get up and make a cup of tea or something to eat, and you come back in and the next fight's already rolling through. So I think it really, the way they've designed the program, the format of it, it's meant to keep fans engaged, and I think they've achieved that. And working with other promoters too, I think they've shown a way to keep a generally consistent product while utilising other promotional outfits and their fighters to make sure they've got the content consistently rolling through, which was always going to be the challenge. There's not really a promotional stable in Australia that can do that many shows or even close to it in a calendar year. So you need to work with other promoters, and they seem to have a business model that does that very well. Well, how about your thoughts, Zach? You've probably seen as many cards as me, or if not close to it.
Yeah, mate, I've absolutely loved it. Loved it for a new operation with a new broadcast partner. And as you mentioned, working with different promoters. I mean, from my little couch where I'm watching it, I give it a 10 out of 10. And there's no doubt in my mind that next year it will only continue to get better and grow and evolve. I have to give them all the credit in the world, because what boxing promoters in this country and broadcasters in this country and globally, what they do is go, here is the product that we are going to make, and the fans will serve it up to the fans, and anyone who says negative about it isn't a boxing fan. That's essentially, they treat us like absolute garbage. The PBS are the only ones in the world that I know of that go, what do boxing fans want? Let's give them that. They're the only ones. We don't want to, as you mentioned, we don't want to see rugby journalists and AFL footy players on the desk for half an hour telling us their thoughts on a fight we already just watched. We want to see the next fight, Correct. It is unbelievable how that broadcast has crept into boxing, and PBS are going old school, and I love that. They're putting on great matchups. Again, do they have the most high-end talent in the country in volume? No, but have they got some really good fighters, and have they always been incredible matchmakers? Yes, and most of the time that's all we want as fight fans. You've said it yourself, Coxie. I'm stealing your phrase. You don't need to see the most elite level fighter. You need to see evenly matched fights, and I would completely jump on that bandwagon. And Ace and now the PBS have done that more than anyone for 25 years. Before the Rose brothers even knew what boxing was, they were doing it. So, and now I've thought back to like that Ibby Bella Jalen Tate fight. Like, you could easily have that fight in 1969 on TV ringside and it wouldn't look out of place. You know what I mean? Like, what an excellent fight. So, yeah, for me, it's an absolute 10 out of 10. And I look forward to watching the last show of the year. Definitely interested in a few of those fights for sure. And can't wait to see what happens in season 2 in 2025.
For sure. And a lot of these matchups wouldn't happen without television. The fighters wouldn't be prepared to risk their record against guys in 50-50 fights or 60-40 fights without the opportunity to build their brand. So I think that helps get the boxers on board a bit more too for those tougher matchups. Look, great matchmaking is what boxing is all about. I'm regularly watching PBS and seeing fighters I've never seen before, or I've heard of, or might have seen once or twice or something. And then they're fighting again in a couple of months' time. You've got that momentum, you've got those eyeballs on you, and you start building your own brand. And obviously I'm watching because it's part of my job, but I'm also becoming a fan of these fighters too, because I'm seeing them regularly. I'm seeing them go through adversity and come out with a win or doing something special in the ring. And the first thing I'm thinking is, when am I going to see him again? And next thing I know, there's another fight announcement and I'm seeing them box 2 or 3 times a year on TV with regularity. It's good to see. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So I don't think there's a boxing fan in the country that hasn't loved it. And the best thing, they listen to the fans. Not that we're always right, but we're the audience.
And that's been their business model from the start. When it was first announced, I spoke to both Angelo DiCarlo and Glenn Hosking, and they both mapped out what they wanted the show to look like. And they've obviously gone to 7 with that pitch. And best of all, they've continued to deliver on it. They haven't wavered from that and thought, oh, this is too hard, or this is easier, or this is more cost effective, and chopped and changed it. They've stayed true to their mission statement the whole way through. So hats off to them.
Absolutely. 10 out of 10 from me, which means nothing in the grand scheme of things, but it's better than not being 10 out of 10, I guess. But anyway, the next day, mate, Sunday, the 1st of December, I know we got one of your mates back in action, one of your favourite fighters, Sonny Edwards, in the all-British grudge match with Gal Yafai. I'm actually quite pumped for this fight, mate. Are you fired up for it?
I am. I think Gal Yafai is a wonderful talent. I think Sonny is a superb talent and a wonderful character. So... yeah, look, and Sonny doesn't have a style that typically appeals to me, but I think he's a wonderful boxer, and for whatever reason, he just kind of gels with me. I think it's a good matchup on paper. Again, it's hard with these uber talented young kids who have had so few fights to know where their ceiling is, and is this a step too far for Gal Yafai, and will Sonny's experience shine through, or will Gal Yafai live up to the hype and show why he's considered one of the best prospects in England?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. No, I'm pumped. I'm absolutely pumped for that fight. I love it. And yeah, just two more, mate. So I sort of finished my box rec search there. I was on page 16. I was like, gee whiz, I'm going to be here for hours. But obviously we got two more fights coming up in December that we know of, with massive implications for Australian boxing. We got Liam Parro defending his world title, weirdly back in Puerto Rico, which I'm sure you can shed some light on why it ended up there, against his mandatory Richardson Hitchens. First off, Coxie, why is it back in Puerto Rico?
Fucked if I know.
Okay. So we're in the same boat.
We're in the same boat on that one. Honestly, I have no idea, and I haven't dug into it deep enough to try and find a reason there. I'm sure there is some reason, but I haven't come across it. It's an odd one. It's not like Subriel Matias is on the card or something like that to try and promote a rematch or something. So yeah, I'm not sure. That's kind of beyond me. But look, Paro's been there before. He knows what the crowds are like. He's obviously knows what he's in for in terms of like just being in a foreign country and things like that. But he's fighting an American, so it's going to be a lot easier, you'd imagine. And he becoming in a CA side of that as the champion. So it's not like he's going to have the world against him like he did when he fought Mateus over there. So, yeah, look, it's an okay fight. I think that Paro's just far too advanced in terms of skill for Hitchens, but stranger things have happened, I suppose.
Yeah. I've got a feeling this is going to be real dull. Just in terms of the matchup. Like, we've never really seen Hitchens take any risk. He loves to control from the outside with the jab. Arguably lost his last fight against Gustavo Lemus. I thought he lost. So he's not really coming in with the greatest momentum. Conversely, Liam Parro is coming off with career high momentum. But just with that, so we're pretty sure Hitchens is going to be real tall, sit back, use his jab, which then sort of puts the onus on Liam to kind of force the action a little bit more and close the distance, which isn't exactly his strong suit. Not saying he can't do it, but I much prefer Liam as the counterpuncher and playing with that range. The last time that he did try to close the distance and be reckless was against Yomar Elamo, and he got knocked down in the first round in a very uncharacteristic performance. And conversely to Tim Tszyu, Liam learnt the lesson and didn't commit that mistake again. I'm hoping he does it in this fight, but at least Hitchens doesn't seem to be the guy that can really make him pay if he does. But it kind of, just looking at it, I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much, but it just seems like with that style matchup, it's going to force Liam to have to get inside and get things done a bit more and get through that jab. But not saying he's not capable of it. It's probably just not, and I have full confidence, 100% confidence in Stephen Edwards and Alfie DiCarlo to no doubt come up with a sensational game plan. And I have all the confidence in the world in Liam's ability to perform on fight night. But it just kind of seems like it's going to be a little bit of a tricky one that might not necessarily be full of fireworks, if you know what I mean. I hope I'm wrong, but as long as we get the Aussie gets a W at the end of it, I'm happy.
Yeah, same. And look, hopefully that leads to a more palatable title defence for Liam in the first quarter of the new year back home in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And we'll just finish up, unless you've got anything else to throw in for the month of December. But I don't think it's been made official, but all signs are pointing to it. Sam Goodman's got the opportunity of a lifetime. Well, that's one way to look at it. On Christmas Eve against the monster for the undisputed super bantamweight title, Naoya Inoue. God, I remember when Jason got the fight. You know, it's exciting, but it's also terrifying. And I just have the exact same emotions.
I don't think Sam's going to have a very good Christmas. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, geez, it's going to be a tough one. But is it basically, quote unquote official, but without being officially announced yet, or what's the status of it? Because it's not listed on anything that I had to look at before.
No, look, it certainly hasn't been officially announced, but it's been the rumours about it have been so widespread and been going on for so long that it's hard to imagine it's not taking place. I guess they're just negotiating the finer points of the contract, the little bits and pieces that happen behind the scenes, and how many plane tickets and blah blah blah, that sort of stuff. It does seem like it's going ahead. As far as I know, it's going ahead on that date. So I'd say pencil it in and be surprised if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, as it gets closer, we'll talk about it then. I don't really want to try and think about that matchup too much at the moment, but that'll do us, Cocksy, unless you got anything else that you can think off the top of your head.
Just one more fight to mention is Dempsey McKean fighting in Saudi Arabia on the Usyk Fury undercard against Moses Atuma. So so the big southpaw from Queensland gets his chance to rebound from his loss to Filip Hrgovic last year against a kid considered one of the hottest prospects, certainly in Britain, and some people would say around the world. So big challenge for Dempsey. He tells me he's up for it, so hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coxie, you've been doing so many fighter interviews lately. As someone starts mowing their lawn right next to your window.
Yeah, exactly. Me stupidly having my window open, I'll close that and hopefully...
That's all right, mate. Got to bail up the hay sometime. But,
exactly.
But you've been doing tons of interviews lately. Your coverage has always been sensational at the Ring and for any outlet that you write for. But it seems like the last couple of months you've picked up a ton of momentum. Been covering cards in Japan as well and doing a mountain of work. What have you got coming up, mate? And just let people know if they haven't recently sort of been keeping in or logging on to your Twitter account and seeing what you're doing. What have you been doing and what do you got coming up for the rest of the year, mate? Because you seem to be bloody busy these days.
Yeah, sure. Look, as always, I'll be covering all the major fights featuring Australians, interviewing a lot of those guys pre-fight and writing up the fight reports as well. Certainly the fights happening in Australia and many of the fights with Aussies boxing overseas. There'll be the Floyd Masson article this week. There'll be another piece on Dana Coolwell coming out. The next edition of the Ring magazine, which isn't out until December, will feature a special feature column by my good self on the noble art of clinching. That's some way away yet, but I think we can discuss that a little bit more closer to the date. But yeah, really just staying on top of what's happening on the local scene and what's happening with Aussie boxers boxing globally. And just trying to make sure all of our readers have access to top quality information and first-hand accounts from the boxers themselves.
No, absolutely, mate. It's never a question when your name's on the byline, mate. It's 100% quality, and you've got the respect of not only the Aussie fans and the appreciation of the Aussie fans, but I think more globally now as well with the work you've been doing the last couple of years at the Ring. It's been phenomenal. But just to reiterate and just to clarify, the clinching article that you're working on, which I have known about for a while, and I'm super excited for it to come out. That's actually coming out in the printed like an actual magazine, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes,
not online, like an actual newsagent style edition.
That's correct. The Ring's putting out a special edition focusing on the Usyk Fury fight. So that will come out a week or two before the fight there. So one of those wonderful glossy print editions that we save for special occasions. So yeah, it's always good to have a actual hard copy of a magazine in your hands. So yeah, it'll be a good one for people to pick up.
Christmas presents all round.
Absolutely.
No worries, Coxie. Well, thanks very much, mate. I always have a ton of fun talking to you and breaking down the fights, mate, and getting your thoughts on it. And yeah, mate, I'm sure we'll do it again.
Absolutely, Zach. Thanks for your time.